Now first things first, you're going to want to select a mage. I have opted into choosing the Warlord for this demonstration. We've already talked about how to set this up with one exception. At the beginning of the game, the mana supply for each mage starts at 10. No matter who they are, they start at 10. You set up the rest according to the health value and the channeling value for this and this. Once each player has selected their mage, they take the portion with the art and place it in the corner with the door. The opposite corner across there diagonally has another door for the other mage to start. And you place everything else where you'll need it. Now your mage is going to start off with one of these placed face up and one of these placed face up. Right on him right there. Next you're going to roll the d12 for initiative. I got a 1, the other mage got a 10. Well, let's just say I got the 10, the other mage got the 1. So the initiative token gets to go to me. That means I'm going to be starting the game. And initiative token will be passed. We'll go into that in a sec. You're also going to want to get all the other tokens set out in a convenient place, all the dice, everything really that you're going to be using in a convenient location so that you can get to them easily, and so can your opponent. Here's a look of what things should look like when they're all set up in a 2-player setup, which is all the base game allows, unless you buy a second copy of the game. What I'm about to go over next is all laid out on the back of the rulebook. We have the ready stage, and then we have the action stage broken down for you. And then when it comes to the actual action phases, it breaks down right here what kind of actions you can take and what the actions do. And then up here it has the attack order and spell order. So everything I'm about to cover is also right here on the back of the book. Have one of those handy so you can reference it throughout the game. First things first, let's start with the ready phase. In the ready phase, now on the first turn you won't have any of this to do because it's the first turn, but let's assume this is not the first turn and you've used your mage and maybe you've got some of these icons on the board that are in the used position. So the ready phase, the first thing you do is you flip all of these around on all of your creatures, all of your mages, anything that's face down like this, you face up like that, as well as any of these used icons, you would flip face up to the ready position. You will also resolve any condition markers on. So let's say this mage was burning or someone else was rotting. You will resolve all these in an orderly fashion. So if this guy was burning, you'd follow the rules. On the upkeep you roll 1 dice. Boom. It was a 1. So that means on a 1 to 2 I take a damage. If it was a 0 I would have removed the burn. And that's how those get resolved. They're pretty straightforward, printed out on whatever the token is that you need to utilize. Again, using the codex where you have any additional questions. Next, we move to the channeling phase. In the channeling phase, you will move your mana up by your channeling amount. So this mage gets 9. It starts with 10 at the beginning of the game. Even at the beginning first turn, you get to get your first 9. So everybody starts with 10 plus whatever their channeling is, essentially. So now this mage has 19, for instance. Also, if you did have any familiars or conjurations or anything that generates these wonderful things, they generate those right now as well as part of the channeling. Next, you have your upkeep. Some creatures have an upkeep cost. If it has an upkeep cost, that means if you don't want it to go away, you've got to pay some of your hard-earned mana to keep it on the board. So check your creatures for those. It will say on the card in the traits if it has update or not. Next is your planning phase. This is probably the part of the game that takes the longest because this is what's going to happen on your turn. This is where you crack open your spell book and you're able to choose 2 spells that you'll be able to use that turn. Now the 2 spells that you choose are the only 2 spells available to you. You don't have to use them both, but you can only use those 2. You can't get back into your book until the beginning of your next planning stage. Now the exception to that rule I've already covered when we were going over the cards. If you have any spawn points, those will spawn creatures. If you have any familiars that can cast spells, you can choose a spell for those as well. Next is your deployment. If you do have any of those spawn points that are casting creatures, those creatures are cast right now before anything else happens, before we move on to the action phase or anything like that. The action phase starts off with the wizard who has the initiative token deciding whether or not they want to use their quick action. Now, whether they decide to use it or not, the next player gets to decide whether they want to use theirs or not. And if the next player did something that maybe the first player decides, well, never mind, I definitely want to use mine now as well, they can come back and decide to use it. Now, you don't have to use your quick action right now. There's several other opportunities to use your quick action. You can also use your quick action before or after the activation of any of your friendly creatures. And then at the end of the phase when all of the creatures have moved, right before you move on to the initiation step again, you can choose to use your quick action there if you haven't used it yet. Again, starting with initiative and then moving on. Another quick piece of clarification here. The mage's quick cast action that uses this can only be used once per round. That's why it flips over, so you've indicated whether you've used it or whether you haven't used it. And it can be used to cast one quick spell. It cannot be used to essentially make an extra move like a regular quick action, or make any attacks or anything like that. It is simply to cast one quick spell, indicated by the quick cast up here. Not anything down here on your wizard or anything else. So let's kind of go over into what you get to choose to do for your actions once the quick cast has been either utilized or passed. You get your movement. You can choose to move and perform a quick action, or stay put and perform a full action. Either way, whether you move and perform a quick action or stay put and move a full action, this gets moved over to indicate that that creature has already acted. So let's kind of go over what quick actions are. So if you've chosen to move and make a quick action, your quick action can be to make a quick attack. So if your creature has an attack such as the Warlord that indicates that it is a quick attack because it has the lightning bolt there, then you can make that quick attack after or before moving. You can cast a quick spell. So if you have any spells that are constituted as a quick spell, again by the lightning bolt, this time up in this corner for the casting phase, you can cast a quick spell. You can put your creature on guard by adding one of these tokens to it to indicate it's on guard. We'll cover the guard rules in just a second. You can choose to use your quick action to make another movement if you'd like. And then if you have any special quick actions, some characters have special abilities or actions they can take, then you'd be able to do that at this time as well. Now when you are moving and doing a quick action, you have to move before you perform whatever the quick action is. You also cannot perform two quick actions. It has to be a move and a quick action, or you can forfeit the move and just perform a quick action, or you can just move and forfeit the second quick action. But I don't know why you would want to do that, since the second quick action could be a move, or at very least put your creature on guard. So, and that utilizes that. Now for movement, you cannot move diagonally. You can only move straight in, yeah, you get the gist. Straight movements, not diagonal movements. And the other option you have, if you don't want to make a movement, you can make a full action. So in this case, if this creature was in a square already with an enemy and it wanted to utilize this attack, which is a full action, it could do that for the duration of its turn and then get the green thing flipped, or red or blue or yellow, whatever color it is for your wizard. You can also cast a full spell if you've got a familiar or a wizard that's looking to cast a spell. For instance, this wizard can summon a creature. Summoning a creature is going to be a full action right here. So you can summon a creature by placing it on the board in the spellcast radius of the creature, and then placing an action marker on it in the upside down position, indicating that it cannot move the same turn that it was cast. Or you can take a special full action, just like the quick action. Some Some creatures or wizards have a special ability they can use that utilizes a quick action. They can also have some that utilize a full action at times. Now let's go into movement again and pretend like you've got this enemy creature right here adjacent to you, and you wanted to make a quick action to move. You couldn't use a quick action to move into that square, but at that point, since you've hit a square with an enemy, you would not be able to use your quick action for a second movement. You would have to use your movement for an attack or something of that nature. Likewise, if you're starting your action in a square with an enemy unit, you can move away, but you cannot use a quick action to move a second space because you move from hindering. So the exception to that is if your creature has flying. Now flying is a pretty spectacular ability. If a creature has flying, it cannot be hit by any melee attacks. It can only be hit by ranged attacks, indicated by the green bow and arrow there. Also, well, I guess if a flying creature makes a melee attack against another creature, then that creature can do any kind of counterattacks or anything that it has. But overall, it can only be attacked by a ranged attack, and it's not hindered by movement. So if my warlord did have flying, it could move and then move. Or likewise, if it started here, it could move and then move. And as long as it's not performing a melee attack, grounded creatures can't really impact it that way. However, other flying creatures will obviously impact its movement and can make ranged attacks against it. Here's what an attack looks like. Let's say the warlock's attacking the druid. So the first thing is you declare your attack. If there's multiple enemies in the zone, you just declare which enemy you're attacking. Then, if the enemy has any defenses, they play those defenses now. Now here's something I didn't cover on the card overlay, because I knew I'd be covering it right now. This little symbol, if the camera will focus, so frustrating sometimes, is the defense symbol. It's going to have a character up here and then a character up here. This character means when you roll your 12-sided dice, if you get higher than that number, your defense worked and the attack is just void. They used their action point to declare an attack on you, and you blocked it, nothing happened to you. Right here indicates how many times you can use the defense for that particular card. This one can use it one time. Others can only use it, or can use it infinite times. So this would be one of the cases where you have the ready. Ready indicates you have not used this ability yet. Once you have used it, it flips to the use side, and they can no longer use the defense in this case because it can only be used one time. So you roll the dice, whatever indicated there, if it's 8 or higher, the defense was blocked one time in this case. So if he was attacked again by another creature, he wouldn't have that defense anymore. So that's step 2 in the attacking, is avoiding the attack. Step 3 would be rolling the dice. So in the case of the warlock, he currently rolls 3 dice to perform a melee attack as a quick action. So he's going to roll his 3 dice. Dun, 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 dun. He got himself a pretty good roll, 2 critical hits. Now here's where armor rating comes into play. Let's pretend like, well, let's just replace the druid with this guy because he's got a lot of good examples on him. So this guy has an armor rating of 3 and a health of 10. So, oh, there we go. Armor rating of 3 and a health of 10. So, let's say that he did roll his d12. He failed the roll by getting a 7. You rolled your attack. These 2 with the starburst means they're critical. Critical hits means you can ignore the armor rating. They just go to the health. So, this knight happens to take 2 damage in this case. So you're going to place 2 of the damage tokens on him, and that was the attack. Now it could have gone a different way. Let's say he rolled a 1, a 2, and a 1. In this case, well, let's do a 1, a 2, and a 2. It looks like it's a pretty good roll. The 1 is going to go through because it's critical. It ignores the armor rating of 3. Now the 2 and the 2 totals 4. So with the remaining that's not critical damage, you compare that against the armor rating. Their armor rating was 3. I rolled a 4. The difference is 1. So that does 1 damage. Because the armor of 3 blocked 3 of that, leaving 1 to hit. Now the armor rating doesn't go away, it doesn't get worn down. Every single attack, it can be used. The next step is actually the additional strike step. If your character has a triple strike, it does the rest of its strikes right now. After you've made all of your attacks, damage barrier effects go into play. So let's pretend like this knight had this circle of fire on it. This right here, this little pokey snowflake thing, gear, whatever you want it to be, indicates that it's a damage barrier. So if this had the damage barrier on it when I attacked, if the attack going through is successful to the creature that has the damage barrier attack is made as a free action. So in this case, if this guy had this damage barrier, he'd be able to make a 2-dice attack that's a flame damage that has a chance of causing burn and is unavoidable. Which means if something is unavoidable, even if the creature has one of these, it can't be avoided. So let's say that this guy had this equipped on him all along. So now we're going to use that attack by rolling 2 dice, and since it does have the damage effect that can cause burn, you also roll this dice with them. So here's the damage barrier attack. A 2, a 2, and a 0. Now my mage doesn't have any armor, so that 2 does 2 damage because I haven't equipped armor on him yet for the sake of this demonstration. So my mage would take 2 damage. Now since it's my mage, rather than taking 2 damage there like I was about to do, he would just move his slider chart up 1 and 2. He took his 2 damage. And then this was a 2, which as we can see from the condition, does not do anything. Had it been a 7 through 9, then you would have been able to place one of the burn tokens on him, one of these bad boys, and had it been a 10 or higher, you would have placed 2 of these on him. So that's almost the end. If there are any counter-strike abilities after these damage barriers take effect, the defender would make its counter-strike if it has the ability, and then the attack ends. At this time, if the attacker had a sweeping ability, then it would attack everything else in the attack zone. If any of the creatures were on guard, any of the creatures that were attacked were on guard, those creatures would then remove their guard token, which as you recall is this. So now is no better time than ever to cover what exactly guarding does. So as you may recall, one of the quick actions is that you can put your creature on guard. So let's say this creature was here all along, or maybe he's here and you've got your other mage here. So what you want to do when it comes to your action, let's get this on him, is you want to make your move as your first quick action, and then you want to place him on guard as your second quick action. The reason you may want to do that is because when your creature is on guard, he gains the counter-strike ability, which means, if you'll recall, just moments ago, step 7 in the damage, or the attack phase is, if you've got counter-strike, you use it then, if your creature's still alive. Next thing that gives you is it's protecting the zone. So if anybody fires in with a ranged attack, they can hit anybody in that zone. But if anybody moves in and attempts a melee attack, they have to attack whoever's on guard first. And then once that creature's been attacked, as we already discussed, the guard token gets removed. The other time the guard token gets removed is at the beginning of that creature's next activation phase. So let's say the turns went around, you refreshed everything, that creature's still on guard if it was not attacked until his activation phase. And then you remove it and decide what you want to do for its activation. You can put it back on guard without any movements if you'd like. You don't have to move creatures. just use your quick action to put it on guard again. But those are the two times that these get removed, is at the end of the attack phase if it's attacked, or at the beginning of its activation phase when it's ready to be activated. Just a couple points of clarification I realize may not have come through very clearly. If there ever comes a time when your opponent has more available actions than you, for instance, let's say it is my turn, but my opponent has two creatures with available actions, and I just have my mage left. So I can, in effect, pass on my turn and let them take a turn without any penalty, because they have more available actions to utilize than me. So I pass on my turn, they give this guy an action, for some reason they decide to move him away. Now, we're at a place where we both have an equal number of creatures or mages or anything that has available actions to utilize. Anytime that we are at an equal point where we both have the same number of creatures or what have you with actions to use, or I have more than my opponent, I cannot pass. So in this case I would have to use my mage and do his thing. And let's just say I decide to sit there. You don't have to do anything, but you do have to flip your token if there is a point where, again, you are at an equal point with your opponent, such as this, where there's an equal number of actions, or where I have more than him. Another thing that I've never really specified, but I think should be pretty clear, is only mages can cast spells, or creatures that say they're familiars, or other spawning points can spawn creatures. But overall, your wizard is the only thing that can cast anything. So after looking at the length of the video, I've decided not to go over the spellbook creation, but suffice with me to say, you can look on page 35 for all of those details. It's a very good reference. You're also probably going to want to start looking on page 31, where they start talking about the mages in a little more detail, some of their strategies and how to use them. And on page 3 actually tells you how to build a basic version of this spellbook for each mage. That's where I would recommend starting, and then once you've got that under your belt and you feel more comfortable with the rules, you can flip over to page 38, where it has some already built spellbooks for you for more advanced games. But then, as you get bold and branch out, just refer to page 35 so you can customize your own decks if you want, or books.